If you like our content about training, then you'll love our programming too. Head to the notes below to grab a free week of general physical preparation. You get unlimited access to me and fresh programming every single week for less than $1 a day.
Conversation over like it didn't happen if you want.
No, that's all good. Alec was just sort of talking about just like microphone quality for podcasts. He was miring the setup. Obviously, Harvey doesn't accept anything less than flawless audio quality, so he always makes sure that the boys have good rigs. But Alec sort of just commenting on, he was, willing to drop an absolute bag. I mean, this guy has the Air. How much are the AirPod Maxes? They're like
no, they're like $500. I don't know. I got them a long time ago, but I have those.
That's
I have
grand AUD.
the Bose.
Our dollar is battling right now.
Sure. Yeah, probably. I definitely have some expensive headphones, but in terms of mic quality for podcasts, these are $20, just the stock Apple ones, and they're pretty solid.
I mean, I'm trying to even think without doing the little Britney Spears lapel mic. I don't think it'd be even possible to put an effective vocal microphone into the AirPod Maxes, because I'm like, you've got to have it like up to the face. There's just no way around that.
I wish they would make just
like they can just sort of.
An attachment would be great though if you could just like plug it into the port, as like if it was like a $50 accessory. Bluetooth. It'd be sick. Yeah. Well, and it has like a USB like for charging. If you could just plug in like a little mouthpiece or whatever, I think it'd be great.
I think you're a problem solver. But welcome to the show, Alec Blenis, obviously friend of the show. This is his second full guest slot, and he also had a feature recently. How'd you find mediating the Atlas debate? Was it annoying, or was it you enjoyed it, or sort of?
I had so much fun actually. I've been on a guest on a number of shows, and I feel like not that there's pressure, but like you're the one in the spotlight, so it's all about like what you say. Which can make it a little bit harder to have fun. Whereas when you're the moderator, you're just like an instigator, and it's super fun. Just like, I just want to get these people fired up, which is really easy to do, especially with you and Atlas. But it was like kind of made me want to start hosting some more debates or my own podcast or something like that.
Okay,
you definitely should be like the regular person that does it all. That was unbelievable.
People want long form Alec Blenis.
I love it. Well, if anyone wants to set up debates and you need a moderator, I'm happy to do it because I thought it was a blast.
But you have zero interest in yourself sort of starting like a weekly podcast of your own. Is there any temptation? Because I see you've flirted with YouTube.
Yeah, there's the temptation. I just don't think I would commit to like a schedule. I don't know what your schedule is with like weekly or monthly, or if you go in spurts or like what it is. But I know
I'm just raw dogging 2 times a week until the wheels fall.
Are you? Yeah, I don't know what I would do. I started a newsletter and I'm like, okay, I can't overcommit here. I'm like, I'm going to send one newsletter every 4 to 8 weeks. And so far that's good. I'd probably do something similar with the podcast.
Oh, those are rookie numbers. We've got to up those numbers. Because where I'm coming at that from, I mean, I'm just genuinely passionate about content creation, but people are probably sick of me talking about this by now. But one of the things that keeps me up at night is I look at so many of the training systems that I don't like. I'm like, how did these get so popular? Because we always like to joke that the fitness industry is full of idiots, but I think that's unnecessarily harsh as well. I think, if you're good at communicating even the most complex of ideas, like the average person is smart enough and maybe intuitive enough, I think, to be drawn to the truth. Maybe that's me being.
You just got to yap yourself to the top.
Well, no, and this is the other thing, and I'm just going to go on a rant for a bit, and I'd love you to share your perspective on it, because I get worried when I'm emphasizing content creation so much that the message is being slightly misconstrued. I know a lot of people get it, but it's just my view is that whether you're a good coach or a bad coach, whether you're promoting good ideas or shit ideas, that has nothing to do with how big your platform is and how successful you're going to be in this field. What I was told when I got into this industry that I feel like is the biggest lie ever is that if you're a good coach and you just work on getting results, that you'll be a successful trainer. And my argument is that all those trainers who just focused on the skill set and getting results still got lucky. Because I know so many fucking brilliant coaches who just got fucking absolutely crushed and like stomped out of this industry because they, again, just focused on being a good trainer, being a good person. And like I said, I think, but you're interesting because you're quite a considered person, but you're still attracted to short form content creation. But I feel like there is this incompatibility, or there's this perception of an incompatibility with more thoughtful trainers who want to share more nuanced information, that they cannot take advantage of something like social media and content creation without compromising their values. And then we complain about what the biggest fitness systems are and the most popular ideas. It's like, well, these people, whether you like them or not, they're fucking putting in the work to produce the content, because you need like, I don't want to name anyone explicitly or any sort of cult or system, but like, not only do they create short form content that you can immerse yourself in, long form content, you can wear the fucking t-shirt, you can go hang out in the community groups. Like, I feel like so many of these functional cults prey on, especially like lonely men. I know that was a lot, but anyway.
Holy shit. Where were we going?
Okay, so yeah, I'm like, what's the fucking question in that? Or is it just me trying to like be like, Alec, I need a YouTube video a week and a podcast a week, and like, because we need you, man. It's messy out there.
Oh man, where do we go from there? No,
I have questions on hybrid training if you got nothing there.
you're absolutely right in that a lot of the smartest people I know and people that I look up to in the industry and that would go to for questions of like, what do you think about this, or how can I learn from you about this topic? A lot of these people are either like not on Instagram at all, or they have like 1,000 followers and they'll put out like one good post. Their last good post was like in 2021 or something. And you're like, that was good. where have you been for the last 3 years? And I think the problem is two or threefold. One, that so many people just get so stuck like in the business that they can't work on the business, which I think is a little bit of a cliche, but like they're just stuck in the grind of going to the gym, hammering sessions, trying to get better at their craft. And like, they just can't find the bandwidth and the energy. And I think they know like deep down how much work it is. Like, you're not going to become a content creator success overnight. And the thought of investing years into some process and like additional part of your job is just so overwhelming. And I totally understand that. Like, I was there. I was a in-person trainer training a bunch of sessions a week. And every once in a while, I'd like pop some ideas on Instagram and get like, 20, 30 likes or something like that. And it's like, what's the point? And it's hard to like see what's possible 3, 4, 5 years down the road, because you post once a week, you get like your closest friends all giving you a like, and like nobody really cares that much. And it's just such an overwhelming step to take to like commit to it when you know what it actually entails. But I would say, just like anything, it's not like, you go to the gym, you don't have to go and have a killer session. You just got to show up. And I think it's this exact same thing with the content of like, don't let the scale of the problem overwhelm you. Just focus on the consistency aspect, just like you do with fitness, just like you get your clients to do with fitness. Just put something fucking out there every week. It doesn't have to be every day. Just make it part of your habit. Write about what you're doing for training. Write about what your clients are doing for training. I don't care what it's about. Just practice the skill of writing. Practice the skill of filming yourself in a way that you don't look terrible. Like, figure out the lighting and the angles. Like, it takes time. It's gonna be 6 months down the road, and you're gonna be like, why was I fucking filming from the floor in the dark? And then like, now you don't have that problem anymore. But you have to go and you have to make those mistakes. You have to practice it. You have to not let yourself care, not let others care, because it's going to be years before anybody cares. But you just have to show up. You just have to show up.
There were so many awesome things, so many bias confirming things that you touched on there as well. Because again, I just look at it as same principles of strength training. Like you said, showing up, consistency, and you kind of touched on like just the progressive overload of it. Because I sort of go both ways. I get scared to tell people to post every day because I think their reaction to that is, that's going to ruin my life. I don't have the bandwidth for that. And I'm sympathetic to the perception of that. But I'm like, yeah, it's the same way that when you do your first squat session, your legs might be trashed for like longer than a full fucking microcycle. But the idea is that there's a certain point where you're going to be having maybe the worst day of your life, but you can still shit out an Instagram post in 30 seconds. Because I sort of see both of those sides from you, where you clearly to have boundaries with social media, not trying to let it overrun your life maybe. But how much time do you put into content creation? Because like, I know that like it's your whole life and your whole life experience is getting distilled into sound bites effectively. But as far as the explicit process.
Yeah. Well, I think one, to like continue the analogy with, it's a skill, just like what you do in the gym is a skill. I think that a lot of people, they look at content creators and they think of all the things that they're not. They're like, I'm not as smart as so-and-so. I'm not as funny as Angus, or like whatever it is. They're like, I'm not this, I'm not that. So they come up with these reasons why they're not
as tall as Jacob.
Right. You're not good enough to like be a creator. Like, what do I have to offer? Right. And I think it's a lot like fitness. I look at myself as an athlete. If you're like, what am I the best at? I mean, I'm kind of like mediocre at like pretty much every single
you do have a fucking world record. Shut
up. Well, all right. Like, I'm not like the best runner.
You can't pull that shit on here.
I'm not the best runner. I'm not the best lifter. Like, my squat's okay. My deadlift is like kind of embarrassing. Like, I have a lot of lifts where I bet there's a lot of strong people out there who look at my content and they're like, how the fuck does this guy have so many followers? I'm stronger than him. Or like, there's runners who are like, why the fuck are people listening to this like, 250 marathon or talk about endurance? I blow them out of the water. And the point is not that it like trying to toot my own horn about like being a hybrid athlete or whatever, but you have to find a way to take all of the things that you're okay at and put them together into a package that no one else can do. And so for me, I can do a bunch of good lifts. I can do a bunch of good runs. I do a lot of stuff, and I can combine things that I'm just kind of okay at and have something unique to offer the world. And it's the same thing with my content. I'm not the smartest person out there. I don't dive the deepest into the research out there. I'm not a world leading expert on any particular topic. But you want me to make a meme that incorporates some like Lord of the Rings and some hybrid training and some anti-fragile, anti-nocivic messaging all rolled into one post? I'm probably one of the only people out there that's doing that. And I found an audience for that. So it's not about, look at me, I'm the greatest, I'm great at all these things. I just have found a way to kind of monetize my unique collection of decent skills. And I think everyone has a way that they can do that in their own way.
100%. Jacob, you got next? I've got a million fucking follow-ups from that.
I didn't even answer your question. I just realized that you asked me a question and I chose a totally different question to answer and didn't even touch the one you asked. But so the actual question that you asked me before I went off on my unrelated tangent was how much time I spend on social media. And what I generally find is that the less time I spend on it, the better it goes. And not in a direct way, but it's like, when I'm feeling inspired, if I just come up with something and I'm like, fuck, I gotta talk about that, I can throw together a post in 2 minutes. I'll post it. It'll have typos. Someone will give me shit about it. Inevitably, whatever. And those posts will do great. It's the days when I'm uninspired and I'm like, I haven't posted in like 3 or 4 days. I should probably get some up there. That I'll end up just like scrolling through my old posts or like kind of banging my head against the wall for a little while. And some days I'll be able to pull something out of my ass, and some days I'm like, fuck it, it's not going to happen. I try to put a time limit on it. Whereas like if I've sat down, like I'm going to sit down and I'm going to create, if an hour goes by and I haven't posted something, I'm done. Like it's just not going to happen. So that's kind of my time limit. But more often than not, it's like, I'll just come up with something, be like, oh yeah, I want to talk about that, rip it in 5 to 10 minutes and go. But I definitely have lots of those days where you get pretty severe writer's block.
Yeah, 100%.
If you're sick of going goblin mode on the same 4 accessory exercises at the end of every single session, head to the notes below and grab our free gymnastics program. It'll change the way you think about accessories forever.
So do you recommend people start doing such lengthy written posts like you, or do we develop that muscle where we start with like smaller and then slowly increase the amount we're sharing and stuff like that?
I think that you can do whatever you want. I think that there's no, like, people talk about what's the best video length for YouTube or what are people's attention spans on Instagram. Don't cater to any of that shit. Do what you like. Find the content that you want to create. Find the content that you want to engage with. It's like build it and they will come. Just find your people. Because if you try to make content that You're like, oh, this is going to be appealing because it's like this color palette, or it's got 3 slides, which is like people's maximum attention span that still ranks well or whatever. It's just don't. It's stupid. Just make the content that you want to make, because at the end of the day, it's better for you to have 1,000 engaged followers that absolutely love you because you're making the content that you like and that they like, than appealing to the masses with content that's disingenuous and you had a reel go viral. Good for you. And you can't sell a fucking product because you don't actually know what you're talking about. You just made a catchy video, and now I have a bunch of people that follow you and are going to fall off. And now people are going to make fun of you and be like, yeah, this clown has 50,000 followers and 10 likes on all his posts. I bet he bought them. And it's going to be a laughing stock. So don't go down that route. Just be authentic. I'm not saying don't care about the followers, because they do matter at the end of the day in terms of like being able to convert, but they can never be the main focus.
Yeah, it's always such a struggle balancing like how much to give a fuck about it, because it's so special and meaningful to me to be able to like just talk about exercise with people, and just like I fucking love that. But then also not getting all your validation from social media about like, man, all I've ever wanted is to just be able to like yap about exercise to thousands and thousands of people. Like, well, I also like training, I like living the life as well, but like, yeah, I just get so fucking G'd up.
Well, and like it doesn't, like your income, your success, whatever, doesn't scale linearly with your follower count. I think in the last year, like my growth the last year has been phenomenal. But I think over the last year, I've 5x'd my following and maybe 2x'd my revenue, which is great. Like you can't complain about something like that, but it's not a 1-for-1 at all. And you have to be able to do something. Can I
dispute that? Were you genuinely revenue maxing, or were you just like, because you don't strike me that money governs your entire existence?
No.
Like gun to your head, I reckon you could have fucking. Congratulations. And that's what makes 2x. It's just like, we're fucking cooking.
Yeah. Oh God. Well, so the way I see it, and I don't mean to dehumanize followers or whatever, like they're real people. They're not just wallets and whatever. But when it comes to like selling a product and trying to monetize a page, it's not like you can just keep taking money from people forever and ever and ever. You can't just like I can put up a post, I can put up a story, I can track the revenue I get from a particular story. Just because I can make X amount of dollars on one story doesn't mean I can do it again the next day. Like you can't just, it doesn't scale that way, right? Like people just get quickly, sales fatigue.
Do you think about concepts in your head like LTV, lifetime revenue, and then thinking about your offering as it relates to that? Or is that just never something that crosses your mind? It's purely on this, it's like, this is a good training product, these are my bills sort of thing, and then just meeting, like, because I just get curious about this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are.
To me, I think of it almost like stocks. Like long-term stocks are going to trend towards their fair value. And there's like hype stocks and meme stocks, and things can get overvalued. But at the end of the day, it's gonna return to fair value sooner or later. By the way, thanks for pumping my Crocs stock. It's doing great.
Hell yeah.
But I see a training product it's kind of like your stock, right? And if you provide good value, like truth will out essentially in the end. But there's nothing wrong with a little bit of hype and stuff. But if you hype the shit out of something and you like get 10,000 people to sign up for a garbage program, it's gonna dump hard. So you got to make sure the fair value is there. You got to make people know about it. But like you can do a lot with just having value and then talking about it. But I think of it kind of like a crop for harvest, where you put in the work of like cultivating this crop. And you can I'll go months without talking about a single thing that I sell. I'll go months. And then things are just ripe for harvest because you post one thing and people are like, what, you have a program? Like, I've wanted a program. Like, this is awesome. And it just sells like wildfire. But But
you can build up goodwill. Goodwill feels like it builds up in like this dam when you're not being a whore and when you're like, no, I'm just trying to make you guys' workouts better. Just give me 3 seconds of attention and I'll try to improve your workouts. And that's the end of it for now. Like, I think that's such a good perspective. Like, I call it like the nurturing process. Because you sort of touched on this, right? Like, people are obsessed with going viral and the vanity metrics, like the follower count. But when you go through it in your head, like my experience, I've never just hit follow on a coach's profile and then bought a product or submitted a coaching inquiry or anything like that. When I think about my own experience with any of these people who I've ended up buying off, I discover they exist. And then I have this relationship building process with their content where I'm like, oh, if I give this person attention, my workouts improve. Or I feel like I understand training better. And like, that's insane value for me. And then at a certain point in that, maybe when they've done it for, like, I think this process is like typically 6 to 12 months. I don't know what, if you sort of paid attention to like how long it takes you to convert. But yeah, as soon as you just start framing the process like that, it seems very obvious. And that has been my experience.
In general, I found I have 2 types of customers. And whenever I get a customer, I ask how did you find out about me in like a little form. And it's one of 2 extremes. They either found out about me earlier that day and they're just like, I discovered you, I like binged your content and I want to give you my money kind of thing. Or it's someone who's like, I've followed you for years, like blah, blah, blah. It's like one of those 2 extremes. It's never someone who like, I don't know. They're like, I saw your viral, shirtless video last month and now I'm ready to buy a program a few weeks later. I don't get that too often.
Because that's gone the furthest outside your, I hate this word, quote unquote, niche. It's like by law and the physics of it, a post cannot go viral without dramatically reducing the quality of the person that it gets in front of as far as like them being a good fit for you. Like all of our shit is just like a little bit too niche. We're all a bit too weird to be going viral successfully. It's like if you're selling underpants, it's like everyone wears underpants. You can go viral and it's just like the person watching it will be wearing underpants.
Yeah, if you're selling if you're like a Gym Reaper's like affiliate seller and you like sell weightlifting accessories, go viral. That works great for you. But yeah, we sell weird programs. We appeal to weird people, which I love. And I think it's great. I think you can do more with less. I think that you can be if you find a good niche, you can be super successful, make a solid living on 5,000 to 10,000 followers. You can have a whole online business off of 5,000 to 10,000 followers. You're not going to make a good living selling supplements with 5,000 to 10,000 followers, which is what I think people try to do.
Dude, whoring protein, the economics of it never worked out in my head. I'm like, write a fucking program.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, trying to sell products. Like I was thinking about the other day, I was talking about.
Has anyone offered you a serious bag to whore protein or anything like that? If you're comfortable. It's okay. Like you like don't want to.
I've never pursued the conversation because I've had companies reach out. And like, I don't even know what it would be, but like Legion reached out to me this week and they're like, hey, would you be interested in sponsorship? And like, I don't know what the amount is, but I don't want to know what the amount is because I'm not doing it. It's just like,
how much could they offer you to be like, this fucking protein? I know that there's other proteins. I can't imagine you, because that's it. The whole reason I follow you. and like, even them identifying you as a good fit for the brand, I'm like, it's not.
Unless you're.
No, you could, but like, I'd be like, well, and I would allow you to do that because you've earned the right to do that. But it'd be like this thing where I'm like almost looking the other way. Like, I know he's a good person, but I'm like, why is he?
So I'm just going to go on record and say that if you guys ever see me shilling for a supplement company, it is because their CEO bought me a villa in Lake Como. And I just want you to know I'm living my best life. But if it's anything less than that, I'm not going to do it. I can make more money selling programs.
Have you had online casinos hitting you up?
No. What?
Oh, okay.
I've had casting agents like, hey, we want you for this TV show.
I keep getting online casinos hitting me up, and because I'm not sure how much you're paying attention to influencer trends just in general, Alec, but like online casinos are just like taking over influencer marketing. And I know this is a very personal topic for Australians because Australians have the highest household gambling debt per capita in the world, the average Australian household loses over $900 per year. And like that's
those are rookie numbers.
It scared the shit out. Number one in the world, baby. We're number one. You guys can't hang. Like I know we've had it legalized for way longer than you guys, so you probably dominate us.
Well, that's not as much as I thought, though. I mean, I thought it would be more than that.
No, but per capita, so it's like,
well, that is crazy.
My mum and dad never lost anything, so it's like someone was taking their share of it as well. Like, do you want to talk about hybrid training first, and that is a trend, or stretch-mediated hypertrophy and lengthened partials?
Oh man, you know, I feel like I don't get as much opportunity to rip on some other non-hybrid topics on podcasts. I'm happy to do it, but I kind of want to nerd out on some other stuff.
Yeah, please. So can we? Because obviously the first question that people want to uncan with this topic is like, lengthened partials, overrated or underrated? But I think that you're definitely going to say overrated based on the meta. Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth here, but I always hear things as well when people are talking about like lengthened partials, like why they work. It's maybe not to do with stretch mediated hypertrophy. And I hear some people say stretch mediated hypertrophy. I hear other people say long muscle lengths. I hear people saying things like muscles don't stretch. I hear a lot of things. I'm hearing a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, I think it's impossible to answer any like overrated versus underrated question without like considering the audience like itself. Because I think if like to be fair to like the people advocating for it, I think if you walk into at least the gyms I train at and see the range of motion that people apply to most of their exercises, I would kind of like to get some more stretch mediated hypertrophy content in their feeds, to be like, maybe you want to squat more than like, 30 degrees down. That might be good for your quads. So I think maybe for the general public, I think we could probably continue to talk about the value of training at long muscle lengths more. But I think within our kind of community of evidence-based weirdos, I think it may have gone too far and gotten overemphasized to a degree. I think that everyone wants to be the person to like be on the cutting edge, and everyone wants to sound really certain. So people come out and be like, it's not stretch mediated hypertrophy. Like long muscle length training is overrated. It's all about where the muscle has the most leverage. That's the way that it is. And if you don't understand that, you're a fucking idiot. See posts like that, which are kind of annoying because I think that no one is really that certain. There's so many variables that we don't really understand in this research. And I'm happy to dive into some of those.
I would like to know where we do have more certainty, because maybe it's probably not a very long conversation. Or what are we certain about when it comes to proven mechanisms of I swear mechanical tension's like the only one. Or is that even? Are we nervous about that?
I would go out on a limb and say that mechanical tension is the primary driver of hypertrophy. But even when we look at like concentric versus eccentric training programs, when they've had people like do these contrived training programs, so they'll do concentric only contractions or eccentric only, and kind of observe the results from that. I think that those are interesting because we see eccentrics being better for hypertrophy in beginners. And then I think that gets extrapolated, and people talk about like the role of eccentrics and then like milk the eccentric, the value of going slow on the way down and everything like that. And then on the other side, we have influencers who seem very, very certain that only applies to beginners, and that the concentric is the most important for muscle hypertrophy, and that the eccentric is overrated and all of that kind of stuff. But when it comes to like, where is the line between beginner and advanced? When does one stop being as important versus when does another become important? What's the timeline for that? Can you be desensitized to some of these stimuli? Does it depend on the muscle? Is it exercise specific of when an exercise is novel, the eccentric is valuable? do you have to overload the eccentric? Would eccentric overload still be valuable for advanced athletes versus just controlling the eccentric with a weight that you can lift concentrically? I think there's a lot of these questions about like timelines, loading protocols and stuff that I don't think makes even just are eccentrics or concentrics better for hypertrophy. Everyone talks about that like it's a sure thing. I saw two people get into a fight on maybe it was Paul Carter's comments, maybe it was Dr.
I assumed it was.
You said this. I can't remember. I can't remember the two people. It was like two random internet dudes fighting, and they were like the evidence is super strong that eccentrics are better for hypertrophy, and they like cited some PMID with like a meta-analysis from Schoenfeld or something. And the other person was like, I don't know where the fuck you're getting your data because like this says the exact opposite, and they like cite another meta, and it's like the fact that we have two people
fucking
that are
idiots.
So sure of
fucking
themselves.
Idiots.
Posting, PMIDs to these meta-analyses that say conflicting things. I just think it's ridiculous that anyone is that sure of it. So that's kind of my general stance on a lot of these things. I think we can say that the evidence maybe leans in one way or the other, or we can talk about what factors might skew the evidence in one way or the other. Like, are you a beginner? Are you advanced? Like maybe this, maybe that. But there's just way too many absolute statements being made about it across the board. And I think that's the case with stretch-mediated hypertrophy as well. There was an interesting one this week that was like revisiting the bicep curl study where the biceps grew more, got more distal bicep growth from preacher curls. And now they're like, maybe it wasn't the biceps, maybe it was like the brachialis or the brachioradialis that was actually growing. And that's why we saw more radial growth or more distal growth. Yeah. Versus like, were we looking at ultrasound growth versus MRI growth? Are we really sure that the biceps grew more from that exercise or not? So like, even if you have a study, like we could have looked 6 months ago at the study and be like, yeah, for sure. Like preacher curls grow the biceps more. You can look at that study now and be like, well, maybe we didn't interpret that one 100% accurately. So I think we have to just leave that room for uncertainty, because even the study that you're citing to prove your point, we might look at that from like a different angle in 6 months or 12 months and be like, yeah, it didn't mean exactly what we thought it meant.
Great answer. I'm going to have to go listen to that one again to absorb all of it. But something that you touched on was maybe this idea that we are more sensitive to certain stimuli. And this got me thinking about the role of periodization. I'm generally a periodization skeptic, and I think that there's also a lot of periodization skeptics in the bodybuilding community. This idea of like, do we lose sensitivity to certain types of stimuli? Because like where I'm at with it currently, I can't separate the need for periodization from the inhuman, fundamental human need for novelty and like the psychological boost and just the fact that you can never control for that. And I think that's a lot of my issue with this stuff. It's so hard to isolate and test all these variables because we lack the instrumentation. What are your thoughts on the role of periodization for muscle growth? And then maybe we can get into it for other types of training.
Yeah. Well, I think that I've often seen there's a variety of things that I think people say that is like evidence-based, or they use fancy words like desensitized. Yes. But if you ask someone like, show me a study that proves that like human physiology becomes desensitized to certain stimuli, in terms of like training inputs of like this, mechanical tension was working and now your body doesn't understand mechanical tension anymore. I haven't seen a lot of compelling evidence for that. So I think a lot of variation strategies that people will implement, they'll be like, oh, your body is desensitized to squats. It's been 4 weeks. So we got to change it to a box squat. Cause like, confuse the muscle. And that's like where people are usually talking about it, and they'll use those words. I just haven't seen good data for that kind of stuff. So from like a periodization standpoint, I think a lot of it is kind of pseudoscience of like trying to complexify training and make up.
We love that here. We shit on periodization constantly.
They're just making up reasons. What they'll like come up with some way to like progress load. It's just like a long-term loading strategy. And then they'll just try to like science it up and make it sound more complicated than it is. When it's really like you just kind of increase load for a while and then decrease load towards competition, which I guess is periodization. It kind of depends on how you define it in the first place.
Could you quickly in your own, what does it mean to you? I guess. Sorry if that's too much to sort of.
Well, so like the two main definitions that I think of is like one, the broader definition, which is just like planned training phases, which I think is reasonable. And then the other definition would be like, I guess just a misapplication of that, where you're like training for specific qualities that don't like really exist, or you can't train them in the way that you're thinking you're going to train them. Like we're going to do a muscular
examples.
Yeah, like we're going to do a muscular endurance phase into a hypertrophy phase. That's not a thing. Like that's
neuro phase. I hear that one.
That's fucking stupid. Phases. Yeah, these are not actual phases and like actual qualities that you're training in a phase. And so that like whenever I see periodization, it's usually some sort of like pyramid or spectrum, and it almost always has like muscular endurance or stability, which are just like red flags for this person has no fucking clue what they're talking about. And then it'll be like hypertrophy, and it's like a 4 to 8 week block, and you're like, what the hell is that? And then it's like a periodization for like a soccer player, and there'll be like 4 to 8 weeks of speed and power before like competition. I'm like, you're doing 4 to like what? This is the dumbest shit I've ever seen in my life. Like if you're actually a soccer player, or footballer or whatever, you're training speed and power all the fucking time. Like I don't understand this weird you're 3 months out, so you're on a BOSI ball. Like that's the periodization that I think is really stupid. You can absolutely plan training. You can absolutely say like, we're going to be in a higher training volume here and lower training volume here because you're closer to competition. Great. That makes sense. You could call that periodization, but I don't know. I guess it's semantics at some point. I just don't like how most people implement it.
We value your input here at the High Performance Podcast. Head to the SpeakPipe link in the notes below, and you can leave us a voicemail where you can ask us a question or leave us a topic for us to explore on the show. We hope to hear from you soon.
Are you a John Kiley Kool-Aid drinker? I think if I had to summarize his central contention with periodization, he sort of says, he's like, yeah, so to me, it means planning, but then there's all these predictive qualities. Like if you had to separate what's the difference between just having a plan and then what's periodization? It's this association with predictive qualities. And I think if you look at like the era that traditional periodization theory emerged from, it was when we thought that the body was a predictable car, or not really. And again, like the society where it emerged from, it's like, do you think your fucking feelings really matter in the USSR?
So I get this. No, I get this a lot, especially with the endurance side of like hybrid training. If I'm training someone and they have like say they're 24 weeks out from a marathon, it's August and someone has like a marathon in February, they'll be like, hey, what do you think my training is going to look like in December? They'll want to know. And on some level, I have a general idea of like, well, you're starting now. You're probably going to be running more by the time we get to that point. Training is going to get progressively more specific as the event approaches. But people will be like, when should I hit my 20 miler or whatever? Like they'll throw these things out. And I'm like, I don't know. Like I have a direction I want to take you. I have some goals that I'd like you to hit along the way. But I think that the issue with periodization, especially with like endurance training, is people will just they'll like plan out these progressions, and they'll be like, oh, you should hit this distance on this day, this distance on this day. By this day, you should be able to do this workout. And then they just like forget to pay attention to how the person is actually responding to the training. And they just give them the plan. And I think sometimes that's the whole issue with it, is it takes the focus off of the athlete. And then you're just like, it turns into just delivering a training plan versus actually coaching.
Traditional periodization theory encourages a guru-like dictatorship sort of. And whereas I look at like where coaching is moving, it's much more towards hero's journey, which I think I lent into too much. It's like, people go from like just classical music to then just like full jazz. I went too jazzy, all jazz. And I thought it was promoting a lot of jazz, I think, to people who hadn't learnt classical yet. So they didn't really know when they were playing that. Because like I sort of came back to, and it was working with better athletes that made me realize this. Because I'm in this whole like, we'll just see what's there on the day. But then I was training these more elite performers that are like, no, my body is a predictable PR machine. I have a fucking testing day in 7 days and I'm going to hit this fucking number. And just watching them do it. And me, when they say that, me just like thinking to myself when they're like, I'm going to snatch this or deadlift this on this day, in my head being like, no, you're fucking not. Like there's no trends in the data.
To be fair,
they do it.
to be fair, like small counterpoint that I found applicable to some people. Sometimes I think the most like BPS approach, like the most biopsychosocial thing you can do, doesn't always look very BPS on paper. And that I've had some people that I'm like, 10 days from now, you're gonna snatch 100 kilos, whether you fucking like it or not. And and then they do. But I think it's like, that doesn't mean that is how training is supposed to be. It doesn't mean that it's this like very predictive thing that you do for everyone. But there are certain people when you're like, no, you're gonna run a 20 miler on September 1st. We're gonna get you there. I think sometimes for the right person, that can be a very effective way.
Top down is like manifestation. Is that the BPS top down?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that works for some people. Whereas for other people, I won't. I was going to name names. Maybe that's not nice to people. For some people, if you're like, hey, you're going to run, I want you to run a 20 miler for this marathon or whatever. I want you to run a 20 miler on October 1st, and then October 1st rolls around, and because they tweaked their knee doing something, they were up late one night with the kids. I'm like, you know what? I think actually we're just going to do 18. They'll be devastated. They'll be like, everything's going to shit. Like, this training program is garbage. Like, I was supposed to be here, and they'll get all defeatist. And so I think we have to be careful with how we talk about the targets. Because for some people, I know if I tell them that I want them to do a certain workout on a certain day, they're going to make it happen, even if it kills them. And some people will auto-regulate. They'll come up a little bit short or whatever, and they'll have a really hard time dealing with it emotionally. So I think in terms of how you talk about periodization with a client, because regardless of what your feelings on periodization are, your client might want to know what the plan is. So I think you have to have some sort of way of talking about it. And the way that you communicate periodization can vary a lot from person to person.
Where do you sort of line the continuum of, we'll let the program ride out, we're doing these sort of exercises for this amount of time to see the growth? Or are you sort of, all right, squat pattern, we're squatting, to press, we're pressing, choose whatever accessories you like?
Yeah. Good question. The most important thing I do when I onboard a new client and I'm talking with them about training expectations and get to know them and their goals and that kind of stuff, is I ask them what makes training fun, what makes training motivating, and kind of what are some of the main KPIs, if you will, or performance indicators that they're going to be looking at to know if their program is working. And I'll ask people, how much variety do you want, or how much variety do you think you want? I'll ask people for their take on how important is consistency versus variety. I have my own take on it, but I want to make sure that I'm being compatible with what someone else says, because I've had experiences with clients in the past, especially people that come from a CrossFit background, where they hire me, I build out a program, and week 1 and week 2 basically look like the exact same thing, because they did 1 week of a program. I don't know how they're progressing. They've only been working out for 1 week. I want to see them repeat some workouts and get some more data before we start making any big changes. And I've had CrossFitters who freak out because their workout program was the same for 2 weeks in a row. And that's on me, because I didn't communicate with them clearly enough up front to realize that they are so nuts about variety and novelty that they can't handle doing the same shit two workouts in a row. So we have to communicate with people on some level and figure out what they're looking for. I'm generally a believer that your program doesn't have to change very much unless you're a rank beginner who's just getting dramatically stronger on a week-over-week basis. I think most people can do the exact same thing for several months for the most part before anything. Generally loading included. You can repeat the same shit for months and you're going to be getting stronger in the background, even if it looks boring. I think we want to give people the perception of novelty and the perception of progression a lot of times, because that keeps it fun. It keeps it engaging. I think it is fun to allow people to slowly develop new skills over time. So from my vantage point, I'm almost always trying to keep someone's program as consistent and unchanged as I can. The simpler, the better to me, because it's less variables that I'm having to worry about if something goes wrong, if they get an injury, if their performance drops. I don't want a bunch of moving parts and I'm trying to figure out what the hell went wrong. I want a really simple program so I know, oh, your knee hurts. Maybe it's because of this small progression that we made a little bit too soon or whatever it was. I don't want to be like, well, I don't know what the fuck happened because we changed 12 things this week. So in my opinion, I want it from a coach's perspective, the simpler, the better. But I'm going to communicate with that athlete and figure out how much do I need to convince you that the program is working and how much fun do you need to be having to stay motivated to stay on the course. As a coach, you should be equipped to make a program appear very complicated and very sophisticated and look different every single week to the athlete. And then you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, it's basically the same thing. I think that you should be able to deliver a program that can kind of satisfy both of those things at the same time.
Very diplomatic answer.
Yeah, nice. Is there a scenario where you have to sort of bring the client that sort of wants this novelty on and on to stay back on track and say, nah, I don't care what you think, fuck what you think, we're staying on this? Or do you still sort of make it work? Somehow.
I think most of the time there's a way to make it work. I have had situations where I'm like, I don't think that your wishes in the program are compatible with what I can provide. I don't think that you have to be able to make everyone happy. I'm sure there's things that are going to be a better fit for someone like that.
Yeah.
But I think most of the time, if you just have an open conversation and say, hey, this is why I programmed it the way that I did. This is the data that I need to be able to see before I can make bigger changes. I need to be able to see if the program is working or not working, and I don't have enough data to see that yet. I think most people are very receptive to having those conversations, especially if you're willing to meet them halfway and say, hey, this is the data I need, but I understand that wasn't very fun and motivating for you. What can we do to meet halfway? What would make next week's programming more fun? I want to make sure that we can at least do these things. What were some things that you really didn't like having to repeat a second time or whatever it was? I think most things can be solved with a pretty quick conversation. And I think if you are open and honest about why you're doing what you're doing, I think people are generally more than willing to work with you on that.
Seeing as we're already in a periodization or programming conversation, I would like to know what your thoughts are. I know we've talked about the interference effect previously, but it's something that just keeps sort of flaring up. And like, because there's so many people who are adamant that the interference effect exists, and I have more sympathy for it depending on who they're working with. I still just feel like every time people try to describe the interference effect to me, they end up describing load management. I'm like, well, let's just say load management. We don't need this extra redundant term. What has the only things that people have been able to bring up that I would consider not load management, like Daniel Back, Jump Science, who I think is a phenomenal fucking coach. And I agree with so many things that he said. He talks about like fiber type changes from certain types of strength training leading to potential interference with like max velocity and things like that. But like, I don't know. I don't have a study, but I've got a mate who's a power lifter and he's qualified for worlds and stuff like that. He's literally just done heavy bilateral strength training. I would say with a bodybuilding actually emphasis for 14 years straight. And I took him to the track and he ran 10 meters a second in his second session. Which I'm assuming he wasn't running 11 meters a second before that. Like, I'm like, man, like when people say like fiber type adaptations causing interference, I'm like, are we like, who's done that? Like, because what fucking sick sprinter is only doing powerlifting training? Like, I feel like I got the most absurd experiment ever.
Yeah.
Which is still just one data point. Sorry.
So I'll interrupt there just to say that I haven't seen a ton of research on fiber type transition, but what I have seen, and maybe there's studies out there and I need to look at some more recent stuff. But the last time I checked on any research on fiber type transition, it was always very extreme training programs of like, let's look at fiber type transition in mice after we fucking try to kill them for like 8 hours a day for years. And then they'll be like, yeah, I think there's like a little
Piana arm program.
They'll just make rats do the most absurd workout programs. And then they'll observe like, yeah, there was a little bit of a shift towards like slow twitch fiber type in these rats. I know that it's possible. I know that fiber type transition happens. But like the scale of and significance and the absurd level of specificity that you would have to have with a program for it to be meaningful, I would love to see the studies that are being referred to, because I've never seen anything that's super dramatic or used an actual practical training program.
Sorry, as well, it was faster than 10 meters a second. It's just heartbreaking for me as someone who's pretty committed to trying to get faster. Like, I've created this ragtag track squad of powerlifters, but they're all just better athletes than me. And like from day one, they're all faster than me. And it's like, but like, I'm the guy who's like, all right, so when you're running, this is what you want to think about.
Well, so that's funny, because like I'm the opposite in some ways. Like I'm pretty strong, all things considered. Not like world class powerlifting, but pretty strong. But my speed, it's garbage, and my vertical is terrible. I was talking to a basketball coach, and I was just like casually mentioning, like, yeah, it'd be sick to dunk someday, but like I just don't see it in the cards for me. You know, like I'm 5'5", and
how tall are you?
And 5'5". I forget what that is in centimeters exactly, but definitely on the smaller side.
Dunks. Got to follow him. He's a 5'5". That's absolute fucking animal. Probably doesn't do as much running as you.
Well, this guy, he's like, well, what do you squat? And I told him. He's like, what do you power clean? I told him. He's like, well, that's weird. You should be able to dunk. I'm like, no, not even close, man. Like, I may be able to meet your like.
Hardcore, baby.
Yeah, it's gonna take some work, man. It's gonna take some work. But yeah, as far as like fiber type stuff, I'm sure someone could look at me and being like, yeah, you don't like, it's all the heavy lifting is making you slow or whatever. But I'd be like, dude, I've been this, like growing up, I was always the slowest person, like track and field day, elementary school, the slowest person every single year of my life. Whereas I'm sure like that powerlifting friend of yours, he's probably had some speed. Even before his powerlifting days, you know?
Or like playing footy with the boys. I mean, like I said, this is someone who qualified for World. So he's just, whatever he does, he's going to be pretty good at. And like, to be fair, he, like last year or the year before, he jumped into a mate's touch football game and fully evolved his hip flexor. Because again, he has the horsepower, but he doesn't have the conditioning. Because I know I could never do that.
Dude, what is
slower than him. I don't have the horsepower to snap my shit up like that.
All of the like most natural speed and power athletes that I know, like the people who are just genetic freaks with speed and power, they hurt themselves doing the dumbest shit all the time. It's crazy.
Dude, Bo Jackson, do you know how Bo Jackson's career ended? Someone grabbed onto his leg when he was running down the football pitch, and he pulled his own femoral head out of his hip. And when I heard that, I was like, I would never be able to do that. No. Like, I don't have that. If someone grabs on my leg, my body goes with. He managed to separate the leg.
Well, he also like jumped out of a 3-foot pool, didn't he?
Oh, dude, I wish they had mobile phones for his high school and college stuff, because there's so much hearsay, but I believe it. Just from what I've seen, I believe so many of the fucking stories. Going back to what you say about being a bit of a slug, sorry, in terms of your CNS, like, how much dedicated speed work have you done? Is power training, from what I see of you posting, it's present in your training, it's not a large emphasis. And that's what I mean, even with a lot of the like running that you do, it is heavily tailored towards endurance.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that I do enough speed and power work to be definitely faster and more powerful than your average endurance athlete. But it's maybe, I don't know, 5% of my training. You know, I'll do my plyos, I'll do some hill sprints here and there. But like, I don't really Olympic lift. The extent of what I'll do with like a barbell, for example, with, you know, explosive power work, is if I'm doing back squats, for example, my warm-up sets, I'll just jump, you know, like I'll put a plate on each side, do like 10 jump squats, put another plate, do 5 jump squats, try to jump with like 3 plates and maybe not get off the ground. And
I like that. I might start implementing that.
yeah. So I'll do something like that. I'll do some plyos or a couple of jumps. But it's pretty minimal. But it's certainly better than zero.
You like to make the joke, like there's a lot of people identifying as hybrid that are just genuinely shit at both. you've got some pretty good standards. Like, what do you got to be doing? Can you, and I know it's hard to just like spit out a number because it's like, I feel like a big thing that I love about hybrid is that it is what you make of it. Like, have your own standards. You don't have to adhere to someone else's standards, but to not be judged by Alec Blenis. And please get on your high horse. Talk to me about some distances and some times and some lifts. Like, what have you got to be putting together as a hybrid to not be laughed out of the fucking room when we're having a barbecue at Alec Blenis's and we're sharing training highlights?
I mean, the best standard is just take like whatever you can do and just take like a little off of that.
Yeah.
And then just, and then just that's the standard. So I'll try to keep that bias out of it. But the tricky thing with like hybrid standards is what's an impressive runtime can vary dramatically across, body sizes, for example. Like if you tell me that you're not a huge guy. What are you, like 80 something kilos now?
So I float between 78 and 83, depending on
okay
how much I get distracted and forget to eat.
All right. So if I'm talking to like an 80 kilo hybrid athlete, like yourself,
yeah.
And you're like, yeah, I can run a 7-minute mile. I'd be like, yeah, it's kind of trash, dude. Like you're an 80 kilo dude. That's kind of trash. But if like,
that's good.
Like if Tom Havland ran a sub 7, I'd be like, that's hybrid as fuck. Like that'd be crazy. So like, there's definitely, you got to account for like that's the biggest variable in hybrid competition. And like, what sort of hybrid competition are you going to excel at? Are you going to be good at something like a high rocks versus CrossFit versus whatever? Like name some of these things that are kind of hybrid competitions. The biggest determinant of where you're going to excel is just what sort of body do you have? And so like, if you're a larger, like if you're a larger dude, like if you're a 90 kilo, 6 foot tall, hybrid athlete, you're probably going to do really well at something like high rocks. Whereas if you're on the shorter side, maybe like 5'8" to 5'10", 180, 190 pounds, you might do pretty well at something like CrossFit. It just kind of varies. So it's hard to throw out specific endurance times without like
What's legit for an 80 kilo male? I need to know now, because whatever you say, I'm going to cross off. It might be hard.
You can do it. You ran a 5:30, didn't you, at push-pull run? I think I saw that.
Specific training.
That's definitely acceptable.
Thank you.
Although, like, I think the mile is just short enough that like you can kind of fake it.
That's what I did, dude. I was just cranking zone 2 on the bike and then all just early acceleration. Oh no, I was doing a decent amount of max velocity. Well, once a week. I wasn't doing max velocity every fucking week. I was doing like a dedicated track session once a week. But I think it doesn't count because I'm also hitting like locomotive plyos like 3 times a week. And hopping's basically sprinting on one leg at the end of the day. So like, as much as I'm like, I train so non-specifically, you're right in the sense that a mile is not an endurance race. It's just like, it's just
right. Like
a sprint.
Like if you take a 100-meter sprinter, like they're not going to crush the mile, but you take them to like a track with some guys and like, it shouldn't be too bad. Like, I think they do better than some people give them credit for. They bitch about it for sure. They'd like talk about how bad it was for the next 10 years for sure, but they do all right.
And I'm probably getting laughed out of the room trying to even just bring up a mile time because it's not the time, it's the distance where you're like, wait. That's not very hybrid. In terms of the bandwidth of training, it's like you're about this close together. So can we talk about now, like how far have you got to be running at what sort of times? I'm not going to run.
Well, so like to me, I think rather than talk about like specific distances, I think the biggest thing with hybrid, like if someone can combine just like maximal strength or power with aerobic capacity, I think that's pretty good. Just like what can we do to kind of measure those two extremes? And I think a simple way to measure aerobic capacity without getting into like specific distance performances or like having to train for a specific event, like are you training for a good mile versus a marathon or whatever, is just like, what is your aerobic threshold pace? So what's kind of like your zone 2 pace? So if you show me someone that can run a solid zone 2 pace or cycle a solid zone 2 power, whatever your chosen modality is, if your aerobic threshold pace is decent and you have a certain level of strength, I think that's great, regardless of kind of what event you're training for.
Okay.
So like on the bike, for example, I like to see like if, and it varies for men and women, but I say for like a young man, like in the open male category, I think you should be able to maintain like 3 watts per kilo on the bike for for a pretty long period of time, whatever that is for you.
Okay, because this is actually practical for me, because what I'm trying to nut out is I'm just trying to come up with some metrics. I'm not really a metric guy typically, but I feel like people need these guiding lights. Like I want to be able to tell people, you know, if you want to talk to me about being generally physically prepared, there's just like a certain package I want to be able to like judge you by, even if it is just for the sake of having an arbitrary standard. So, and I don't even know what the metrics are, but I'm like, I need some sort of aerobic test. And I was like, you know, I knew it wasn't going to be mild, but I'm like, is it going to be a 10K or... Because I was going to make it offbeat because I like that from testing. That I'm like, no, if you're generally physically prepared, you can't be doing only offbeat cardio. Like that's the opposite. But even though that's a part of the training, so I was like, I'll force them to run and be on feet. But then, yeah, I need more time to think about the test.
Yeah, well, I think a good way to test it is like if you run or do any sort of cardio at a pace that is
running in zone 2, I think is GPP.
It is. It's absolutely GPP. And if you stay actually below aerobic thresholds, if you're actually in zone 2, you can still do stuff afterwards. Like if you have someone do a 30-minute zone 2 test, then you could have them do some sort of like speed, power, strength test after, and they should still be relative. They should still be relatively okay. So I think that's a good way to like stack them, because if someone has to like send it to pass your like 30-minute standard, and then you make them test their strength after, they're going to be fucked. Okay. So even though it's not an optimal way to train, I would love to see something where it's like you have 20 minutes to. This is aggressive, but I've always wanted to do this test, and I should probably just do it. But I want to give guys 20 minutes. You run a 5K, and then in whatever time you have remaining, you have to deadlift double your body weight for as many reps as possible. So if you have 30 seconds left on the clock, that's what you get. If you run a 16-minute 5K, you got 4 minutes to stare at double body weight on the ground. I'd like to see something like that, because the better conditioned you are, you know, the more time you're going to have for the reps and so on.
I'd have to fork out like $10,000 to get Atlas to compete against me in that. You don't need to piggyback on that.
Dude, forget sports betting. With the online casinos, we need to get like the fitness community betting on some of this shit and get like a head-to-head between you.
Okay, so this is the thing. No. I've been stewing on this all week, man, because Atlas has been running away from the challenge. Now he says I'm harassing him, so I'm just sort of leaving him be. But I got G'd up because like I was excited. I'm always looking for training motivation. Like ever since I haven't been broke, like that's when my training was going really well. Every other aspect of my life was shit. So I had nowhere else to turn but training. But now that like things in life are going better, I feel like I've lost the dog. So when Atlas called me out, I was just like, put him up. Let's fucking do it. Like, but because he's been soft, I thought I would do a soft, friendly call out of you. And like, I'm basically like anyone who has over 10,000 followers who identifies as hybrid. We can just do this thing where it's like this big buy-in, big fucking cash prize, and be like, let's fucking go. Like, who's the best at this shit? And obviously, whoever organizes it, hopefully me, is going to completely structure it to suit them. But like, no. I want to set up something that's genuinely good. Like, I love the push-pull-run format. But then I feel like you'd be like, no. Like,
see, you know, be kind of sick though. Is if you got a bunch of people to compete in this, everyone gets to put like the event that they want in a hat or something. So you get like 100 potential events from all the different athletes that put the shit that they think they're really good at, and then you just draw 5 out of the hat, and like these are the 5 we're doing. I think it'd be kind of cool.
Okay. I'm gonna, because like, and that's it. I'm not in a rush to do this because I think like if we do it right, it could be something that's like very fun, even just like I would tune in to see the live draw of the events and stuff like that. I mean, obviously
that'd be kind of cool.
This shit, but because Complete Human Performance, they have the Crucible, but like that's. And I respect it as a very broad test of fucking human capacity. It's too biased towards injury, because again, this stuff's like fucking however you want to do it, how you see it. And I would love to see a bit more of like powers. Actually, no, he's got Olympic weightlifting.
Yeah,
it's just not the one that I personally want. It's the only other thing I can point out as like a really good GPP competition. I'll accept CrossFit is some aspects of GPP.
I mean,
it's a bit too.
I'm biased towards the Crucible because I won it in 22, I think.
Because who's the current? It's Sam, the physio.
Sam Spinelli. Yeah. He won it this past year, I think, or last year, I guess.
Okay, right. Wait, what year? How long ago did you win?
Maybe either 22 or 21.
But did you do this most recent one that Sam took out, or
no?
Would you say you let him have it?
He's quite a bit stronger than me. I'm undefeated in the 6-hour run score for the event, so I kind of sweep that one.
This is why I'm not doing the Crucible. It's just like you fucking so disruptive to your life.
It is, dude. So I had an advantage though. So like the year I did it, I think it was 2021. I procrastinated the run till like the last day of the month, and
so you knew what you were chasing.
So I knew what I was chasing, and honestly, that's some of the worst running fitness I've ever been in. I was so deconditioned going into that. And I looked at the scores and I'm like, I got to run fucking 40 miles to win. And I was like, I've not been running worth shit lately. And so, so when I went out there, I'm like, this is just going to be terrible. I ran 41 and I had like 15 minutes in the clock. And I was like, fuck this. I'm so done.
And you canned it. God, that's so fun. Fucking beast. What's a good just one, sorry for just always just hitting people up about standards and stuff like that, but 10K time, 80 kilo bloke?
I think if you're like reasonably strong in the gym, which you are, maybe the bench press could go up a little bit. I saw some of those comments were
dude, that photo of me, I should add in context. my exercise selection was squat, snatch, and clean and jerk. I'm like, what do you mean I didn't have arms? I wasn't training it. Like,
yeah.
Look at the bits I was training.
People's comments are great.
They hate that a man's proud of his body.
I think sub 40 is a very respectable target
I need to work for that.
But I mean, that's cruising for sure. But I think if you can do like some reasonable strength targets, like if you can squat double body weight, I'd say like a double body weight squat in a sub 40 10K is a really solid like hybrid standard for a runner. For a run lifter.
Okay.
On the lighter side.
Okay. And you're right. Like the whole weight thing is crazy because my mates down at Melbourne Strength Culture, like a lot of them are just bigger dudes and they've been working on their running, a lot of them for like 2 years now. And as a lighter bloke, it's like, I feel like you can just remember running exists again. When people talk about training for a 10K, I'm like, what do you mean? Like tying up shoelaces and leaving the front door? Like, it's like, I trust that because I know that these guys have been successful in strength sports. I know that they know what hard training is and they are tough. It's like, I've never been 90 kilos, 100 kilos and try to run. It's fucking...
Yeah.
Shout out to Alex. Yeah.
Well, and the environment starts to matter so much more and more because like I've run with a weight vest on. Like I've done a lot of weight vest running. And I've run some pretty solid like short distance times and that kind of thing. But only when it's cold. Like when you're running, if you're wearing a big weight vest or if you're an Alex Viata, like big dude, you overheat so much faster that like if the weather is not on your side, I don't know how they do it.
So Fergus Crawley living in Scotland is cheating. Because I was just about to say he's like 90 kilos and he did a 5-minute mile. Like, yeah, fuck, that's good. God,
is he 90? I thought he might be even bigger than that. Maybe
he might be.
Yeah, and he's definitely bigger than me. Everyone's bigger than me. When I see stuff, I'm like, they're bigger than me.
Yeah, but you're faster than everything. I mean, sorry, better endurance. But.
Yeah.
Do you have anything coming up? You got any exciting plans that people should be paying attention to, or for anyone who's not aware of you and hasn't been keeping up with the social media, give your platforms a plug as well.
Yeah. So follow me on social media. Do hybrid content, education, memes, all that good stuff. For me personally, I'm little less than 3 weeks out from a marathon in the Alps. So I'm going to Switzerland like day after tomorrow. Going to spend a couple weeks hanging out, hiking, hopefully training, but a lot of time on the feet in the mountains, and then wrapping the trip up with a marathon. I've wanted to do a marathon in the Alps or some sort of race in the Alps since I started running. It just looks so beautiful out there. So it's my first time.
Are you going to try to beast it, or is it just going to be like take in the scenery? When are you going to be here again?
I've been hammering training for this thing. So like,
so you go. Yeah.
I'm going. It's super competitive. I'm not going to win by any means, but like I've been training very specifically for this event. I've been running almost exclusively on treadmill on incline to like prepare for, it's an all uphill race. It's pretty sick. It's point to point. It like runs from the town up to the top of this mountain over a marathon. So I've just been crushing incline stuff. It's been pretty great.
What's the total vertical ascension over the full marathon?
So it's 2,000 meters
up
from start to finish. Yeah, 2,000 meters up.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's like pretty flat for the first half. You like run along a river, and then you do like a 2,000 meter climb in the last 20K.
Damn. Fuck, that sounds intense. Like, what do you, off the top of it, do you know times? Like, it's too hard. I always want to compare things and you can't.
Well, yeah, I want to try to do it under 4 hours, which, like, to put it in the perspective.
Which as a 250 marathoner, or is that what are you hypothetically? Could you?
Yeah. So I'm probably on 250, 255 marathon shape right now. So
okay,
that incline turns it from 3 to 4 hours real quick. Yeah.
That's going to be insane. Is there any way we can keep up with that while you're doing it, like a live stream of it, or we'll just hear about it later?
No, I'll just hear about it later. I'll post the highlights.
I want a little tracker. I'll do an Apple AirTag.
Yeah, there you go. I'm so pumped for it. So like I was trying to convince my wife to do it with me because she's run a couple marathons. And after her last marathon, she's like, I'm never doing one of those again. Like I'm done with marathons. It was cool. Glad I did it. And so I found this race in Switzerland. It's my 30th birthday for the trip too. So I'm like, we're going to Switzerland for my 30th. We're going to run this marathon. And she's like, fuck it. I'm not doing another marathon. And so I start showing her the pictures and she's like, nah. And then I show her a picture. They have these dudes, like just these old dudes out on the mountain playing bagpipes. And she's like, all right, I'll do it. So of all the things, it's like, that's what sold her. Not it's my birthday, not like the scenery, but like the dudes playing bagpipes out there.
Oh man, no, it's funny how you just sell things to your partner. I can't wait to watch all that unfold, and I'll keep you in the loop. I'll try to work out, my own Crucible. Crucible's a sick name as well. I got to come up with a sick name that makes it sound hardcore, but work out what these standards are, and that'll be the GPP testing will be separate, maybe to the like little hybrid competition we'll do, because I liked your idea of the random draw.
Yeah, the random draw I think is kind of a winner. I don't know if you would want to like partition it of like people submit strength contests and endurance, and you have multiple hats. If it's all just one big hat or something, one big hat sounds like fun. I could see it get a little weird, but I don't know. Maybe just put some rules on like how crazy can it get if someone.
That's what I mean. No 6 hour run. Go fuck yourself. Like no one's writing that down. Because the thing is, because if people want to do that, I'll make us all get wet. And that's because the thing I need to remember is that's too alienating. Like I can't be making fun of people for not being able to swim. Like I'm a privileged person who got taught to fucking swim at 3 years old. It's not anything I fucking went and did myself. But 60% of the planet's water. Just saying.
Well, I think it's
fucking lava if you can't swim.
It would be actually pretty cool though. All right, so if you put the contest out there to put anyone can submit a potential event, and to submit an event, you just have to pay $5. So you get to pay $5 to put an event in the hat, and then there's a chance that like your event gets drawn or something like that. That could be an idea too. Either way, I think it has potential. We should stew on it a little bit.
Okay, boom. I'm going to figure this out.
But yeah, we should stew on the hybrid competition. I think it sounds great.
If you want access to a community of like-minded coaches, head to the notes below and join our free school community. I'm in there every week doing Q&As, and there's plenty of educational content on the way as well.